What's all the PMS with Coach G? It's positively motivating sisters with purpose, meaning, style. Are you ready for positive conversations inspiring you to your next level? Do you need motivation to get you growing? Are you a sister, woman, leader, boss, mom, wife, female, her, she? I think you know what I mean. Are you seeking purpose in your life? Do you know the meaning for which you stand? Do you know your style is your unique authenticator? If you answered yes to any one of these questions, this podcast is designed with you in mind, which embodies the whole you, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually. Sisters, we are on a journey in connecting you from where you are to your what's next with purpose, meaning, style, and it all starts with you. Hi, this is Coach G, your Chief PMS cheerleader, motivating and empowering you to win in your personal and professional life. I am your leadership and growth coach strategist, empowerment speaker, author, mom, wife, Christian, and I get to serve you in doing what I am passionate about, you. Sisters, we are on a journey for you living your life on purpose, for purpose, with purpose, meaning, style. So thank you for being here. I always start out with saying, thank you for supporting this show, listening, sharing, following, subscribing, commenting, liking. All those things carry weight and volume in continuing to help us share the love and spread the message and spread this podcast to others. But let me remind you, there are other ways that you can support the show, and that is with a monetary contribution. And you know what? That means that we continue to consistently show up and have special guests like I have today to continue to empower you on your journey wherever you are, personally and professionally. And how do we do that? That's through education, inspiration, and elevation by positively motivating sisters with purpose, meaning, style. And you can go to the show description, click support the show, make that donation, and thank you for your support because you are saying, hey, I stand in support of this show and I want to continue to bless this show and allow us to keep coming with more conversations in this space to bless others. So let's go ahead and get started. We are in episode 76, the power of physical intelligence. And I had to say that a little slow because that may be something new to someone that's listening. And yes, I have an expert guest. I told you I have a guest with us today, and I want to introduce you to her. Her name is Pat Peyton. She is an international speaker and co-author of award-winning Physical Intelligence, which is a 2019 publication with Simon and Schuster. Pat has over 30 years of experience in sales, leadership, and culture consulting and training. As founder and leader of both Sphere International and the Intelligent Body, Pat partners with world-class Fortune 500, FTSE 100 organizations to support them in achieving performance improvement across multiple platforms. She is an expert of creating ground-up processes and content and integrated existing processes and content into solutions, creating experimental development programs for all levels of experience. Pat and her husband, John, divide their time between Scottsdale, Arizona, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Pat states, don't confuse simple as unimportant. And she is here to give you simple techniques that can impact your life to achieve more, stress less, live and work more happily, empower your performance. And I think that's enough for you to listen and stay and listen to this podcast until the end. So welcome, Pat, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Glenetris. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. So you know what, Pat, we're gonna dig in. I say, hey, it's like sisters sitting at a table, we're just talking, we're just comfortably talking, sharing and learning from each other. So let's go ahead and dig in and let's talk about physical intelligence. When I stated that, I said some may have heard of that, some may have not. And so let's talk about that and let's get an understanding. So help us understand physical intelligence and what it means.
Sure. So right now, there are hundreds of chemicals that are racing through each of our bodies in our bloodstream and our nervous system. These are naturally occurring chemicals, and they determine how we think, feel, speak, and behave. All of our emotions, all of that is driven by these chemicals. They arrive at receptor cells in our body, and they set off a chain of events. Different reactions for different chemicals, that swell of pride, the grip of fear, the stomach clenching, all of that is driven by chemical reactions in our body. Most of us operate largely at the mercy of those chemicals without realizing that we can actively manage the balance of certain key chemicals so that we can, as you mentioned a moment ago, achieve more, stress less, and live and work more happily. And we do that through a variety of techniques, ways of moving, ways of thinking, ways of breathing, and ways of interacting with each other. And if we do that well and intentionally, we truly can strategically manage the balance of those chemicals so that we can have better outcomes. We power our performance. Our physiology truly does power our performance. Just as we know that our body will believe our brain will believe our body. They're inextricably linked. They can't be disconnected. And that's what we are hoping to communicate out to everyone through physical intelligence is this interconnectedness, the fact that we've overlooked, many of us, I might even say most of us, for too long, the influence our physiology can have on our performance, on our happiness, on our stress levels. So just as you have cognitive intelligence, our IQ, and emotional intelligence, EQ, physical intelligence, or PQ, doesn't just sit alongside it, it actually enables it, it enhances it, it strengthens it. The more physically intelligent we are, the more cognitively intelligent we can be. We can enhance more of that natural IQ, and we also can be more emotionally intelligent if we tap into that physical intelligence.
Wow. And I'm taking it all in. I want to kind of rewind a little bit because when you talked about that part about that feeling in your stomach, I'm like, man, I never related it in that way. And I'm like, oh wow. So you can kind of take command to that, and there's something to counteract that feeling to, like you said, because our brain and our bodies, the linking of that, now I can tell my brain, hey, my body don't need to feel this way or whatever that is. So let's talk about that because often our bodies and brains do send us signals, and we may recognize it, ignore it, or maybe not even know how to identify what it is. Just like what I just said with that feeling in my stomach, not really relating it to, man, I have a power to kind of control that feeling. There's something that I can interact with that. So, how can we identify those messages, just like those things you just said, in our brains and our body? What's that sending us? So, how can we identify the message our brains and body are sending us?
Well, different chemicals you can actually feel when you have more or less of, not all of them. And in fact, we're not talking about changing the mix of all 400 chemicals. There are a few chemicals that we can and should actively manage. Some keep our hearts beating. We don't want to fool with those, right? Those should just do their thing unimpeded by us. But we talk about 16 chemicals generally in the work that we do, but there are 8 key chemicals that we spend more time focusing on. And I think that's the best place to start. So if you think about a matrix with a horizontal axis and a vertical axis, so
Okay.
just, one line straight up and down and one line intersecting it.
Got it.
The vertical axis is how we're active, is the fact that we are activated by adrenaline at the top, and we come back into balance with acetylcholine at the bottom. So that just know that that's how life works. We expend effort, and then ideally we come back into balance. We don't all spend enough time coming back into balance. That's a conversation for another podcast, right? So, but at the top is adrenaline, bottom is acetylcholine. What really matters is how we are activated. And we can be activated on the right-hand side by cortisol, which is our stress hormone, or on the left-hand side by DHEA, our vitality hormone. DHEA is so powerful that in its synthetic form, it is a banned substance for Olympic athletes. And we would suggest you not take it in synthetic form. And you don't have to, because we can all make it on our own every day. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but let me finish what happens with this cortisol versus DHEA. If we're activated by cortisol, that means that cortisol spikes. We need cortisol to get up and out of bed in the morning. It's very important, but too many of us have cortisol at very high levels, and we need to keep cortisol at optimal low levels in order to perform at our best. Because when cortisol spikes, our other high performance chemicals all get dragged down. And those other four chemicals are dopamine, which is our pleasure and reward chemical, oxytocin, which is our social bonding and trust chemical, testosterone, our power and control chemical, and serotonin, our happiness and status chemical. So too much cortisol, all of those drop. Mm-hmm. But if we can get that cortisol down at optimal low levels and keep it there, then and activate ourselves with DHEA, boost our DHEA, those same four chemicals are boosted, levels of those are boosted. So that's an important concept to keep in mind, being activated by vitality instead of stress. And knowing that if we can get activated by vitality rather than stress, all of those other high performance chemicals are going to surge and help us in all of those other areas. We can't feel changes in levels of DHEA, but we can build it every day. We can feel changes in levels of cortisol. You know that, when you feel stressed, that's a cortisol spike.
Yeah.
So, that facilitates our fight or flight or freeze response. Mm-hmm. That's all cortisol. So that feeling in the pit of your stomach, a lot of that is cortisol. That's too much cortisol. So the first thing you want to do when you have that feeling is to work on something called paced breathing. And in fact, it's paced breathing. That's the technique that we can use to naturally boost DHEA. So that's why it's the first thing to do when you feel that cortisol spike, is to start working on paced breathing, because it's going to help you build DHEA, which enables you to then live on the left-hand side of that grid where all of those high-performing chemicals are at optimal levels. So that's, I'll stop there because I don't want to go too far down the path.
Oh, no. And you know what? I actually, I'm in the moment, right? And of course, when I listen to it again, I'm like, okay, I need to listen to this again, because you're saying some things that I'm like, okay, that repetitiveness, of hearing that. But then I can also very much relate to that getting up in the morning and how you're talking about that cortisol, that stress hormone, just so actively high, and something as simple as paced breathing can make a difference, because it's a natural processing that's happening with our bodies, and I guess taking command of our bodies to level out naturally where we need to be. Like you said, it'll lift that left side, that vitality, those hormones, and we're naturally responding, not from stress, but from that DHEA side of life.
Right.
So
That's
I
right.
want to drive that more in my life. I know I do. So, and I'm sure if the listeners are listening, they're saying, okay, talk to us, tell us. So this is fun because, of course, we had a virtual tea before all this happened, and I was able to go through this pace breathing with her. And I'm like, okay, I want to do it again. Of course, I know the methods of breathing and I've practiced those things and I do it. I do it. I don't do it as often, probably as I should, but I know it does have some strong effects. But the when she took me through the exercise, which I hope she'll just kind of do that. And if you're driving, okay, I don't know, can they do that while they're driving? As long as they don't
No, you
close their
can.
eyes,
Oh
right?
yeah, you don't have to
Okay,
close your eyes, so you can
okay,
you can do this. It's free, as I say. Don't confuse simple with unimportant. This
there
is
you
free and
go.
easy. So many of these, there are hundreds of physical intelligence techniques. Most of them are free and easy, and you can do them in a lot of different places. So
Okay.
one other point on the ability to feel different chemicals. For example, if you've ever had that feeling where you just felt warm and welcomed and loved, that's oxytocin. And if
Mm,
anyone has had a child, there are massive amounts of oxytocin flooding through your system when you have a child. That incredible outpouring of love, that's oxytocin. So there are other chemicals that we can feel, but it's that DHEA where we can't really feel the difference when we're high or when we're low. And that's why it's important to be very intentional about boosting that DHEA, building that DHEA. I would recommend on a daily basis through paced breathing. So shall I take you through that? Would that be
yes,
helpful?
because I'm saying let's get intentional. I love intentionality. I love to be very intentional about what I do. So yes, take us through this technique. Let's get with Pat right now. So whatever you're doing, just get rid of the distractions and listen.
Okay. And there are people who say, what do you mean breathing? Doesn't it just happen? And of course it does. But there are a lot of people who have spent their whole lives not realizing that there are different ways of breathing and paying attention to our breathing that have a direct impact on our performance. So paced breathing is home base.
Okay.
And so I'm going to describe it. And then I'm going to talk about one other technique right after it because it's a really important part of doing it well. So
Okay.
paced breathing is breathing in and out at a steady rate. You figure out what rate makes the most sense for you. It can be an even count in and out, like breathing in for 4 and exhaling for 4, or breathing in for 3, exhaling for 5. So take a moment and figure out which pace is the right pace for you without forcing the in or the out breath. Just what's a normal inhale, exhale, and just take a moment and find that steady pace for you. And then you're going to do that. There was a study done by Dr. Justin Kennedy at the University of South Africa, and he worked with a control group. And for 3 weeks, they spent 40 minutes doing paced breathing every day. Now, don't panic. It doesn't have to be 40 minutes all at once. You don't need to find a 40-minute block for this. You can do it in sections. So I do 10 minutes of paced breathing when I wake up in the morning. I do 10 minutes. It puts me right to sleep. Maybe I don't even get that full 10 at the end of the day because I could be asleep before that's over. I meditate every day for 15 minutes. And while I'm meditating, I make sure that I'm doing my paced breathing. And then I only need 5 more minutes. I can do that while I'm making a cup of tea. I can making dinner, watching television. If you're
Mm,
listening and you're driving, we're all breathing. So we're just breathing in a different way where we're paying attention to that in and out count. So you can do this anywhere. I did a podcast for truck drivers and I worked with them on this because think about their lives and how much time they spend behind that wheel. You absolutely can do this while you're driving or while you're sitting on the sofa. You can do it anywhere. So find that pace. And then once you know what that pace is, let's talk about how to breathe productively. And that's to breathe from your diaphragm. So oftentimes, if I'm teaching a group in Zoom and I ask them all to take a deep breath, I see their shoulders go up or their chests rise. And I really don't want to see that because what you want to do is breathe diaphragmatically. So your diaphragm is kind of down at the bottom of your ribs above your stomach. And if you're breathing diaphragmatically, I'm not seeing your shoulders move or your chest move, because it looks like your stomach is moving in and out. If someone was holding a book against the base of right below your ribs, and you took a deep breath in, that book should be pushed away from your body. That's breathing diaphragmatically. Anyone who's listening, who's a singer, you already know how to do this, or an actor, you know how to do this. And athletes are also taught how to breathe. But outside of elite sports and arts, many people never learn how to breathe diaphragmatically. And that's key, because if you're not breathing diaphragmatically, you're not really getting a full breath. The other thing to keep in mind is posture. Because if our posture isn't what it needs to be, we cannot effectively breathe. We're not productively breathing. So I don't know about you, but my mother repeatedly said, sit up straight, stand up straight. How about you, Glenitrius? Yes, right?
And in the
So
world of modeling their posture,
yes,
sit
and
up straight.
and I was a ballerina, so I had that ingrained both from my mother, my grandmother, and my dance teacher from a very, very
Yes,
young age. So the
yes.
posture's in place. But let's talk about that, because for good posture, put your feet flat on the floor. Now, if you're driving, don't do that. Keep it on the on the pedals. All right. But if you're listening at home, feet flat on the floor, hip width apart, shoulders down. We used to say or hear shoulders back. That's not the best advice, because people then round their back too much. Shoulders down, and imagine that you have weights on your elbows, and that pulls your shoulders right into the correct position. But at the same time, they shouldn't be rigid. Imagine them floating out to opposite sides of the room. So you keep them down, but not rigid. And then picture a string suspending you from the ceiling to the center of your head. Anyone who took ballet class will know this, because this is often how they teach you the right posture in ballet. So a string from the center of your head to the ceiling. And if someone were to pull on that string, it shouldn't lift your chin. It should lengthen the back of your neck. And again, if I'm talking about this in Zoom, I usually see people's heads get closer to the top of the frame when they put that in place.
Yeah.
So with that posture, you now have room to fill your lungs, and more importantly, even empty your lungs. If you're not fully emptying your lungs, carbon dioxide, heavier than oxygen, starts to sink to the bottom of the lungs. And when it builds up, it increases cortisol, that chemical that we want to keep at optimal low levels on the right-hand side of the grid. So it's all connected. You want to put the posture in place so you can fill your lungs and empty your lungs, get that carbon dioxide out, and then do that in a paced way so that you can boost your DHEA and keep the cortisol low. If cortisol is too high, the other thing that happens is our brain waves become chaotic instead of coherent. So we literally can't think straight. It interferes with our cognitive function. And that's one of the ways in which physical intelligence enhances IQ, because it strengthens your cognitive function. In fact, Dr. Justin Kennedy, whose study I mentioned a moment ago, after his group of people went through this research, by the end of 3 weeks, they had reduced their stress by 42% and enhanced their cognitive function by what I think is a shocking 62%.
Wow.
Simply 40 minutes of paced breathing every day for 3 weeks. And I say you do it every day. And again, keep in mind that 40 minutes doesn't have to be all in a row. You can break it up. So I think this is home base for physical intelligence. Again, tell me something I don't know, Pat. I need to breathe and I need to sit up straight. I've heard that my whole life. It's how you breathe and making sure that that posture is right. That's the foundation for all of these other techniques to rest upon. And again, there are hundreds of these techniques in our book, and you can use them, some every day, some of them just when you need them. But that paced breathing is the foundation for everything.
Yeah. And thank you, Pat. Oh my goodness. We went to school. We read in science. I feel like I was in science class, like really hearing the sciences and and how our bodies function and just the operation of that behind the scenes that we can't see. We can
And
feel things, but we don't see it.
And no one ever said sit up straight or stand up straight, because if you don't, your cortisol is going to go up. You're going to be more stressed and you won't be able to perform as well. Nobody
Right.
said if you don't sit up straight, you can't get the carbon dioxide out of your lungs. So
There you
it's
go.
kind of the why behind
There you go.
this wisdom of our mothers and grandmothers before us. They knew it made
Yes.
sense, but they didn't necessarily know all of the science. And I think that's what has interested me so much about a lot of the techniques are things that we might have heard about, but we don't understand why they're so important.
Yeah.
And this one for me really hit home because, as I said, my whole life I've been told about posture, but I hadn't understood the science of it until I started to study the physical intelligence.
Yeah. Well, and so you know what? It goes back to you saying, don't confuse simple as unimportant. Something as simple as breathing, something as simple as your posture. And as you were breaking that down, I heard three P's: pace, posture, productivity. But you're given the why behind each one. And I always say when we have a foundation of why we do what we do, it gives it a different motivation, or that part of you being intentional about doing it. Now you're very conscious and of, okay, let me make sure my posture is right. Okay, Pat explained to me, it's like putting that ballerina, someone that's not in the ballerina world, but they just heard it, what that looks like, what it doesn't look like. And so that's why I say, okay, you have to listen to this again, because she's really giving the why behind it and what to do so you can be productive. And then the part of keeping it as home base, making it a part of your life, daily living, how it can boost now your performance, because now you have a different vitality to move about your day, or know how to deal with the stresses, because we're going to have stresses of life, but it's a part of knowing how and what to do in that moment. Or maybe if you feel that moment, if you feel it rising, just like I'm talking about the
Right.
stomach thing, I'm like, okay, I want to be intentional about, let me just stop and pace my breathing, and breathe productively and make sure my posture is right. Let me just do that. And the more we do that, it'll just come second nature, as say you're just doing it just like breathing.
You do. It does become second nature. And
Yes.
if you feel that stress spike, that cortisol spike, aim for a longer out breath because that helps you
Mm.
expel more of that carbon dioxide.
Ooh.
So even if your normal pace is 4 in, 4 out, or whatever count you chose, if you're feeling especially stressed, aim for that longer out breath to really get that carbon dioxide down out of you so that you can bring the cortisol down.
I love it. Thank you so much, Pat. Oh my goodness. So, okay, in simple terms, because we are definitely going to wrap up, but in simple terms, talk about, can you give us, when it comes to harnessing our body's untapped intelligence, what PMS tip would you share with our listeners to contribute a positive impact in their life and work?
Okay, so beyond the posture and the breathing, one of the other things that so many people need, certainly now, and I would say maybe now more than ever after the past few years and all of the turmoil we've all been living through, I'm hearing a lot about resilience.
Mm.
And I'll give you one other technique. Again, remember there are hundreds, but I'm going to give you this as another one you can bake into every day. And it's the acronym REST. And if you live by this acronym REST, which I'll explain in a moment, you will boost your resilience. You'll enhance your resilience. The R
Mm.
stands for retreat. Think about that tennis player on the sidelines with the towel over their head. Retreat means some time away, at least a few minutes every single day, with no outside influences, no phones, nothing. not even music, just sitting with in silence for a few minutes and clearing your mind. If you meditate, you already get that.
Yeah.
So retreat every day, just a few minutes, not an hour, right? A few minutes. The E is for eat. No surprises here. I'm going to recommend that you eat eat healthy food, right? So this is lean protein, lots of veggies, fruit, whole grains, keep sugar and alcohol to a minimum. Eat. If you're eating the right way, that's absolutely enhancing your resilience. S is for sleep. Study after study after study for years tells us 7 to 9 hours a night is optimal. Those of you with small children are rolling your eyes. I understand. Just know what the ideal is. And if you have a partner, maybe you can take turns sleeping in on the weekend to at least make sure you get a couple nights of good rest. And take naps if you can, so that you can't bank sleep, but naps help.
Mm-hmm.
And even 1 or 2 nights enable that up 7 to 9 hours enables you to feel refreshed, and it gives your brain time. Your body spends the time you're sleeping to clean up your brain. And if you aren't sleeping well enough or long enough, you can't clear your mind. You literally cannot clear your mind. And then that's a cumulative effect. So 7 to 9 hours a night. And then the T is for treat. We all need treats. I would urge you to replace the sugary, salty, and alcoholic treats with healthy treats like a bath, listening to beautiful music, reading the chapter of a book, playing with the kids, taking a bike ride. Something that is restorative for you, whatever restores you, versus putting something in your body that, sure, it feels good. I mean, I have 1 square of dark chocolate after dinner every night. That is one of my favorite ways to boost serotonin, which is our happiness. Actually, 1 square of 72% or more dark chocolate will boost serotonin, happiness, and status. It's not a Snickers bar. That's a totally different kind of chocolate, right? So finding those treats that are positive and restorative and replacing the unhealthy ones with those. We all have to indulge. We have payday pizza in our house, right? Try not to have pizza often, but we'll order a pizza once a month, ice cream once a month. We just control the bad treats, but every day putting in some of those restorative treats. So rest, R-E-S-T, put it in blocks in your calendar so that you don't forget, and you bake it into your schedule and you honor those windows, and you can use that for a restorative treat or your retreat. So if you put it right in your calendar, you don't miss it.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Oh my goodness, you have poured into us the techniques, some strategies, the how-tos, the whys, the whats, really a full circle to help us live empowered in our physical intelligence. I mean, man, that word intelligence, like I feel smart. I feel smarter today already because of the things that you said. And I love the way you gave the acronym REST. I love acronyms because I think that's a way we can remember how to do something, or what
Absolutely.
to do. That just helps because now, just like saying those 3 Ps, I mean, that's how I'll remember the part of the pace breathing, and breathing productively in my posture. Like I had to relate it to something. So thank you for, just relaying everything that you have presented today. It is very important information. Some stuff some people probably don't want to hear right now. Like, I don't want to cut my sweets. I mean,
You don't have to eliminate them, right?
you
Because you
know,
don't want to
but
feel deprived, but
right.
yeah, you manage them. Yeah.
Right. And I love the way you said that. I love you said the payday pizza. That is so cute. I love it. But just find ways to treat yourself and what that means to you, just like the breathing, the pace. What does that mean to you? And all of that really boils down to What does it mean to you? Why are you doing it? But you know what? You've already got the education. That's what I said. Now you got the education, the inspiration, and now you can evolve and elevate in the power of physical intelligence. So you know what? If you want to know more about Pat or ways to connect to Pat, all of that is in the show description. Of course, her website, she has sphereinternational.com, which the international is INTL.com, theintelligentbody.com, two websites that you can go to and learn more about Pat and what she do and what her organization offers. And she also has the book Physical Intelligence. You know what? And we'll have that in the show description as well. Maybe that's something you're interested in. Said, I want to purchase it and learn some more about it for those that are readers. Saying, I want to read more about this. I want, a deep dive, really, really deep dive, because this was just a snippet. And as simple as she presented to us, it was a wealth of information. So thank you for opening your heart to share, Pat. And of course, you can connect to her on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, but all of that is in the show description. And I just thank you so much for always listening in. And I tell you to continue to share the love, because this is for someone else, even for you, but for someone else too. So sisters, just keep continuing to share. Keep continuing to comment, subscribe, rate, follow. And until next time, sisters, let's keep growing, because it all starts with you.